One.
Okay, folks, we're going to talk about crime today. So I think everybody has an understanding basically of what crime is, but we're going to talk about the different types of crime. And then we're going to look a little bit at we'll talk a little bit about the FBI and how it tracks crime nationally in something called the Uniform Crime Report. And then you are going to navigate around the FBI website and get to know a little bit more about crime and focus more on a local and state level. Okay, so crime. We're talking about any violation of statute law, criminal law, and the punishments, range from anything from fine to jail to prison and so forth, probation and so forth. Now, the more serious types of crimes are called felonies, and that would involve crimes like murder, sexual assault, aggravated assault, robbery, those types of things, the more serious ones. So that's going to involve, it could range anywhere from a year's imprisonment to all the way up in some states to the death penalty. The less serious types of crimes are misdemeanors. So these are more minor offenses. It could be something like a traffic violation. And misdemeanors are always going to involve less than a year in jail and often, more times than not, a fine of some sort. Okay, so more serious crimes are felonies, less serious crimes are misdemeanors. These are some of the other categories we'll break crimes down into: violent crimes versus nonviolent, street crime versus corporate crime versus white collar crime, and so forth. And we create legal codes, so we create laws to try and have social control to get people to conform and not deviate. Okay, so what do we mean by street crime? With street crime, we mean crimes that are committed by ordinary people against other people or organizations in public. And street crime would include all the most basic crimes that we think of commonly. Everything from robbery to murder, burglary, and so forth. Those are all street crimes committed by ordinary people against other people in society. Now we break those down into a couple categories. Violent crimes, so this is where the crime is committed against another person. And nonviolent crime, this is where the crime involves property. So somebody vandalizes something that you own, that would be nonviolent crime. Somebody assaults you, that's violent crime. It's a crime against a person. We see more, and this is kind of previewing another time where we'll look at the stats on this. We see more nonviolent crimes than we do violent crimes in our society. There's many more crimes against property than there are crimes against people. All right, white collar crime versus corporate crime. What's the difference here? White collar crimes are committed by people who have a high social status. It could be, somebody who has a powerful job in the government, or it could be somebody who has a lot of wealth. In our society, both of those types would be people who have high status. And they do it, this is the key right here, they do it for their own benefit. So something like on Wall Street, insider trading, which is illegal, where you have information that other people lack about a particular business that people invest in, a corporation, or tax evasion. Or here's a fairly common crime, embezzlement, that happens as well. So they're doing this for their own benefit, not for the benefit of an organization or the whole. And the estimate is up to about $100 billion a year is lost due to white collar crime. So it's very costly to everybody, because remember, when it's done against businesses, what do businesses do when they lose money because of crime, like white collar crime? They raise their prices. So everybody pays for this. It's not like we go unaffected by it. Here's the interesting thing. Most white collar criminals receive probation rather than prison. And those sentenced to prison usually serve in lower security prisons, sometimes called the country club prisons, minimum security ones, where they have more freedom than people in maximum or medium security prisons. So we don't look at white collar crime as seriously as we do comparable crimes that would fall under street crime. It could be even something, like somebody who's chronically shoplifting might actually get a jail sentence rather than probation, yet the white collar criminal many times will just get probation. So for some people looking at this, some sociologists, they think that this indicates a bias in our system towards people of higher status versus people of lower status. Now, corporate crime, the difference here with white collar crime is these are crimes committed by executives in order to benefit their corporations. So companies making false claims, violating environmental restrictions, fraud, and so forth. Bribing public officials, those would all be examples of corporate crime. So they don't do this primarily to benefit themselves personally. They do it to benefit the company. Okay, when we look at the structure of the criminal justice system, the first point of contact with people who are arrested are the police. We have trials, so judges, and then if people are convicted, that involves prisons and prison officials. Parole officers would be another example of people involved in the criminal justice system. There are many more people. When we're talking about juveniles, you have social workers involved and so forth. So our criminal justice system involves tens and tens of thousands of people. So anybody who deals with people who are accused of having committed a crime, they are part of the criminal justice system. So why is crime necessary to a society? That seems kind of counter to what we would normally think. But let's look at that for a second. Some of these things we've already discussed. It clarifies where the boundaries are in society and serves as a deterrent or warning to others that, hey, don't do that because this is how far you can go. And if you go beyond it, you're going to be punished. Now, this gets into labeling, unifying the group. So it draws a line between the people who are conforming to norms and those who are supposedly or apparently not conforming. So they're separate. Those are the people who are deviating. So in other words, it maintains group unity for the people who are perceived to be conforming. Draws a line between the people who conform and those who don't. It can also diffuse, means spread out tension. People are most likely to be to strike out when they're unhappy about society, and then they express it, like with political demonstrations. And connected to that, it can promote social change. So when people break norms that they think are unjust, they can bring attention to it, especially if large numbers of people voluntarily deviate and decide they're going to break a norm to promote social change. So the example I used in class was the civil rights movement. Unjust laws. Now, laws are a type of norm. They purposely broke laws that they thought were unjust and discriminatory. So crime can promote social change sometimes. And then, from that slide 2 slides ago, it provides jobs. So there's an economic value in having people who break the law in that sense, in that it keeps a lot of people employed. So why is there crime according to the 3 perspectives of sociology? So functionalists look at it and they look at how crime can point out injustices in society or dysfunction. Symbolic interactionists look at it as crime occurs because of the influences that we have from significant others, parents, friends, and so forth, or because of labeling, because we label certain people and then have shared meanings from those labels or stigmas. And then from conflict perspective, again, it's the idea that there are certain people, a power elite, who have control of the power and they want to maintain the status quo. So what do? They label people who are a threat to their power as deviants. And that's a way of keeping them disempowered so that the people in power can protect their power and protect the status quo. All right, so this is where I'll stop today, and then you'll work on the looking at the UCR online. With crime stats from the 60s through the 90s, crime decreased pretty sharply, and that includes violent and nonviolent crime. However, violent crime rates in the US are quite a bit higher than most other first world industrialized nations. So even though our crime rate overall has been going down, when you compare it relative to other countries who are in similar economic situations as we are, we have a lot more crime. And we can speculate on why we have more crime later on. How do we make these comparisons? The best tool that we have comes from the FBI, the Uniform Crime Report. So they go out to all police departments, sheriff's departments across the country, and they gather data on 9 specific crimes. So murder, forcible rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, theft, motor vehicle theft, arson, and hate crimes. They gather stats on those 9 categories, and they aggregate, they get all that data, and they gather it together, and they give a snapshot each year of what crime looks like across the country. So it's a really valuable tool because you're getting all corners of the country submitting data. And you can do comparisons between different regions, between states. Within states, you can look at different counties and different cities. So it's a really valuable tool for criminologists to use to be able to break down what exactly is happening with deviance and crime in the United States. Now, there are a few problems with it. The UCR tends to overrepresent lower class offenders because the simple fact is that it is more difficult for lower status Americans to evade the law, to evade prosecution than higher status Americans. 2/3, that's the estimate, 2/3 of crimes go unreported for various reasons. And also, crime reporting is reported differently depending on location. So it's not a foolproof tool, but it's still extremely valuable. And last thing here before the UCR assignment, the crime clock puts into perspective the frequency of various crimes. So this is the most recent crime clock I could find from the FBI. So violent crime occurs in the U.S. about every 25 seconds, a murder about every 31 minutes, a rape about every 4 minutes, a robbery about every 1.6 minutes, and an aggravated assault about every 39 seconds. A property crime occurred about every 4 seconds. So you can see right here, we have many more property crimes than we do violent crimes. A burglary about every 21 seconds, a larceny theft about every 6 seconds, and a motor vehicle theft about every 41 seconds. I think just by using this as a clock, you get the idea that we do have a lot of crime in our society, although it's gone down from where it was in the past, and we see many more property crimes than we do violent crimes. Okay, about the about the UCR assignment that you're going to work on. One of the questions asked for what's the violent crime rate and what's the property crime rate in Chippewa. After you click on the link, you're going to see a list of all the cities in Wisconsin. And if you scroll down, you'll find Chippewa Falls. So this first line over, or this first column here has the total populations of all the different cities. So Chippewa, as of 2016, was 14,109. The next column has a total number of violent crimes in Chippewa over that previous year. So divide the number of violent crimes by the population, move the decimal point a couple of places over, and you got your violent crime rate. And then if you scroll over, and it's just off the screen here, you'll see total property crimes, and then some of these other categories in here break it down, like how many murders, how many burglaries, and so forth, okay? And then one of the questions asks you to compare Chippewa's crime rate with Eau Claire. So if you scroll down to Eau Claire, you can do the same thing again with Eau Claire, and you can compare the rate to the rate in Chippewa. Now, obviously, Eau Claire is going to have more total crimes, but we're comparing rates here. All right, so this should be pretty straightforward as you're working on it. So work on that for the remainder of time and turn it in. And I have the electronic copy of this up on the webpage if it's easier for you to click on the links like that. Okay, so please work on that the remainder of the time, and we'll talk about it when I get back. Thanks.